G'day fellas, and welcome to our House of Lancaster build order guide. Today we're looking at the simplest version of a 3 mana opening. The goal is that we want to get these up by 5 minutes on the dot. So let's get into it. We're going to start by moving our villagers onto a sheep and queuing up some villagers in the town center. Let's go. Alright, so we've got ourselves, there's our vills, and we'll move that sheep over, got it nice and close to the town center, and we're going to use our scout and rally him out onto the map, always going to the middle of the map. So the build order starts off with all 6 villagers onto food. That keeps it nice and simple. There's technically more optimal ways that you can do this, but this is the best I've found just to keep it simple, because I think that that's really important when it comes to mastering a new civilization. So the next vill that comes out of your town center is going to build your mining camp, and then it's going to build your house. And then from there, you're going to rally your town center out with a second villager. So it's a total of 6 vills on food to open and 2 vills on gold. From there, we're going to be looking towards wood as our next resource. Just keeping in mind that because with the House of Lancaster bonus, you do start off with more sheep, you can also actually look to do a little bit more of a longer run around the map than what you typically would. So that's what we'll aim to do here. We'll also make sure that we execute a couple more sheep with our workers here. So now that we've got 2 villagers on the gold, we'll move over towards the wood line. And the goal here is that we want to get 2 vills on wood. So you can see there's a little bit of a pattern that's going on here. We start with 6 vills on food, 2 vills to gold, 2 vills to wood, and then we'll start moving out towards stone. And that's because when it comes to our unique building, the mana, by the way, I don't know how to pronounce that, whether it's manor or whether it's mana. So I'm just going to pronounce it mana for now, just because it feels the correct pronunciation to me. But feel free to correct me. Anyway, so now that we've got our 2 villagers out on wood, we can start rallying out towards stone. And we don't really have to think too much about moving our town center around now. The main focus that we want to do is just make sure that our scout has got a nice rally around the edge of the map, looking to pick up those sheep, that we're training villagers in the town center, and that we're going to get 1, 2, 3 villagers, that's 6. We want to try and get 3 villagers from under the town center that are on sheep. We'll drop down that mining camp as well. And now that we've got these 3 vills highlighted, we want to think about where we're going to be dropping down our landmark. So we're going to be going for the Lancaster Castle. So we could look to do it right here. This wouldn't be a bad spot at all because we've got lots of resources here. It is a defensive landmark. So I think that's going to make the most sense. So we'll go ahead and we'll look to put it down in this position. So we'll prep for that, making sure that we've got a villager in the queue. So now we've got 2 vills out here. There's going to be a 3rd one that comes out. We're going to watch this gold. And when this gold is about to come down, that's when we're going to move these villagers out. So we can see right here, okay, boom, vills out. Take these guys off gold. These guys go over to wood. These guys are going to build the Lancaster Castle. Wonderful. I think we nailed it. That was perfect. All right, well done, everybody. That's the hardest part of this build order. Now from here, we rally the town center out over onto the wood line and just make sure that we always have vills queued up. So we want to try and make sure that we are constantly clicking the button. Keep in mind that with the House of Lancaster, you do have faster gather rate on sheep. So it means that you've only got to have 3 vills on sheep to maintain villagers coming out of the TC. So that is always a nice little bonus for you. So the goal here is, as I mentioned earlier, we want to get all 3 of our banks up at 5 minutes. We do have a cap of 3 to start us off with, and then from there we'll be able to upgrade that to 6, and then eventually to 9, but it is a little bit expensive, and I feel like the biggest benefit, we had a little bit of idle TC time right there, the biggest benefit that you'll ever see realistically is like from dropping those, did I say banks by the way? I meant manors. There's a little bit of Age of Empires 3 that has been inspired into this civilization. I can definitely feel that. So if I ever refer to the manor as a bank, just know that is because the Dutch in Age of Empires 3 had the exact same mechanic, but it was called the bank. It wasn't called the manor. So apologies. It's a little bit of leftovers from Age of Empires 3. You know, the funny thing is, I reckon in 50 years' time, if I was playing an RTS game and they had the same mechanic, I'd still probably call them a bank. So that's I guess it's probably a good thing. Anyway, we've got ourselves a lot of sheep here. That's a good thing about the House of Lancaster. You don't really need a lot of sheep just because you start with extra sheep from the town center, so it doesn't really affect you as much. So we're going to continue rallying out over onto the woodline, and now what we're going to do is we're going to grab 2 vills from in underneath our town center, and they're going to help build this very first manor. It's incredibly important that they help build because it's going to be quite tight. You can see right now we're at 4 minutes and 3 seconds. We're about to actually get a problem with our population. We're about to be capped, population capped, after this villager. So we want to try and rush this bad boy up as quickly as we can. So we'll go ahead, we'll grab the manor, 3, 2, 1, and boom, there it is. We'll hand in the food at the town center. We'll make sure that we queue up another vill and we'll move those 2 across. So now that we're doing this, these 2 can go back to food once they've finished the manor, and we're going to get 10 population from this first manor, so we're not going to get population blocked. And we're now able to rally these guys over onto the second manor as well. And then from here, these guys can then come out over onto the wood. And we're going to make sure that we queue up. There we go. We queue up that villager. And now the final component of this is we are watching our stone. We want to make sure that our stone comes down to exactly 900. And from there, we can then drop our next mana. So we see it hit 900, hand in our stone, and now at 4 minutes and 59 seconds, 5 minutes, we've dropped our third mana. And so that is it. The build order has been completed. So let's go into... Oh, by the way, these 3 vills, you want to bring them out over to gold once they've dropped that down. So these 3 will come over towards wood. So we've got 2 manas online now, and now we've got our third one about to come up. So now this is where... do we have the option to pause? I'm just going to sit it like this. So this is realistically where you can now look to begin transitioning. So the way forward that I would recommend from here is that what you would do is you would build out your production and you would start rallying onto food. So at the moment, we've only got 3 vills on food, and that's because the mana has a whole bunch of food that it is generating. So from here, we can look to drop down some archery ranges and a barracks. We could look to drop down some stables, or we could look to play a little bit more conservatively. But I'm going to go ahead at this point here, and we are going to now play aggressive. So let's have a look what an aggressive playstyle would look like. So we're going to take 1-2 from our wood lines, and we're going to look to rally now over towards food. We're going to make sure these guys come out to gold because that's going to be for our upgrades from the blacksmith. And now with these 3 vills, actually we'll only take 2. We'll go ahead and we'll drop this right here. So we'll have ourselves 2 archery ranges now, and then finally, I think these 2 can do a little bit of a daisy chain, and they'll come over to this side, and then we'll look to build up barracks as well. So let's go ahead, bring our scout back over here, drop off those sheep. And we can even start with the very first. We can start with the very first of the yeoman. I think that's how it's pronounced, the yeoman. And we want to make sure that we build these 2 tiles away from the town center, just primarily because now when it comes, we don't need to build our farms around mills as this version of the English, and that is because we don't get the bonus from the mills. So now that we managed to do that, we've still got these 15 vills that are going to be on wood for the moment. We need to keep in mind if there's ever an opportunity to put down a lumber camp, we want to take that opportunity. It's a very high value thing that you could do for your economy. So now we're rallying over to food here. We'll make sure all these sheep are nice and close. We might slaughter a couple more of them. We'll get a couple of units in queue. So at the moment, where you can see that the economy is quite strong. And at this point, we will be able to easily maintain a complete uptime on all of these production buildings. So that's what we'll be aiming to do. We'll be looking, we could always look to get our double broadaxe in. And I think this is definitely one of those decisions where it's like, if you go for the double broadaxe, you're probably going to be delaying your power spike when it comes to your attack. So I think there's definitely 2 minds about it. You can go into either. Yeah, in this playthrough, we're just going to go straight into the blacksmith as well. You can see we're struggling a little bit with food. We're still able to keep it up. It's just that it's very, very close. So here, as an example, we couldn't afford to get the spearman out, so instead we'll go into the hardened spearman instead. So we're building up our numbers a decent amount. Now keep in mind that in the event that you were under pressure here, we would be rallying to the back. We'd be rallying towards the back side of the town center, and then that way we're able to avoid losing our units towards the front. So we'll continue to do that. And now we can look to put the blacksmith down. So we don't want to put it here. It's a big building and we want to be building our manors. So we can go and put it down over here. There's probably a little bit better of a spot. You could even look to put it up towards the other side of the town center. Let's make sure that we've got units in queue. As long as we've got units in queue, we are happy. We need to make sure that we are also dropping down our houses. So we'll go ahead and drop a house in the front here. We might use 2 vills for it just in case. And now we can start looking towards those blacksmith upgrades. So I think one of the key powers here for the House of Lancaster is their yeoman, the yeoman. I got to make sure that I pronounce that correctly. So I think going into +1 ranged attack is going to make the most sense early. So our timing here is pretty decent here, about the 8-minute mark. And I think when it comes to your general strategy, when you're looking to do a build order like this, the whole idea here is that you basically, you want to wait before you attack. You don't just go all in immediately, because it means that if a person has committed 100% of their resources to early aggression, they are going to outnumber you at this stage. However, what we're doing is we're waiting for our manors to come online. And they've obviously come online at this point, but what we mean by that is we really want them to start kicking out a whole bunch of resources, and they're still doing that, still taking time here, and because of that, it's important that we wait for that to actually happen. So now we've been able to queue up. You can see we are easily able to maintain this here. We're going to make sure that we could probably even just afford to throw a house down right here. We could definitely even think about deleting this lumber camp. We should have plenty of space to drop down all of our manors. And to be honest, it's not mandatory that you put the manors within the radius of the Lancaster Castle. Ideally, you want to, but you don't have to. That's probably the best way to think about it. So +1 now has come through. +2 is about to arrive, or rather +1 ranged armor is about to arrive. We'll continue making more and more units here, but you can see the numbers are starting to look pretty damn good at this point. So we're at the 9-minute mark. And I think after this, like, we could probably even think about going into siege engineering is an option for us. Alternatively, we could look to pick up the unique spearman upgrade. So that's also going to be a factor here. And keep in mind, it is quite affordable as well on the gold front. So -2 armor on enemies. This is incredible, especially if you're up against anything like the men at arms. Really helps you out quite a bit there. So I think we could probably look into going into that direction here. So maybe we do the siege engineering a little bit later, and we'll just look to try and take fights now. So now that we've got all of that sorted out, we can continue to add in more houses. Where are we going to add in houses? We've got to make sure we bring these sheep back in, actually. There we go. So let's go ahead. We'll add... We don't want to put a house there. That's meant to be a farm. Let's throw a house here on the front. Bring you guys back. Okay, so our upgrade is about to come through. So +1 has come through for Iron Undermesh. +1 range attack is through. So now we could look to start pushing out at the 10-minute mark. So I think this is a pretty strong timing here for us. And we'll make sure that we rally out towards the front as well. And so now at this point, we've managed to get all of our spearmen. We've got our longbows here. We've got our upgrade in. And so if we just... We'll just take a screenshot here. That's it. Everything's done. Okay, macro was pretty good, but what this means is now we've got +1 ranged armor. We've also got this bonus upgrade, Billman, to reduce the enemy armor by 2. We've also got our U-men just, you know, absolutely spamming out the wazoo. We've been able to maintain production on 3 buildings, and this is the time to strike. When we think about, you know, other ways that you could play this kind of opening, 100% you could look to play it more economically. You could say, okay, well, I want to get the condensed land practices, get 3 more manas. But if you do that, not only are you then investing in that extra 350 resources, you then need to build those manas. And when we think about the way that the manas work and the economics behind them, they are the most powerful from the moment that you build them, and then they start losing out power, especially if your enemy is going for a 2nd or a 3rd TC. So we want to try and maximize, we want to try and capitalize on that as much as we possibly can. There are other ways that we could do this. We could look to go into the fast castle, but I think generally this is probably going to be the most optimal strategy for them, and I think in team games in particular, an opening like this is going to be incredibly strong. So we'll leave it there for this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've learned something. Keep in mind that I'll leave a copy of the build order down below, so that it's all written out. You'll be able to follow along with it. And if you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. But other than that, we'll leave it here. Just a nice, quick little build order guide video for you. And hopefully it has helped you out a little bit.